There are multiple things that make Dishonored 2 so unique. Aside from the distinct art direction and music, Dishonored 2 exhibits style in its world and level design, combat, and mechanics. Faithful to its immersive sim influences, Dishonored 2 is built around a simple concept. Give the player a goal, but let them do it however they can. Once you figure out all the tools at your disposal and learn how to use them, Dishonored 2 becomes this incredibly fun sandbox set in a mid-1800s Mediterranean whale punk environment. After picking it up again, I wanted to lay out what exactly makes the experience so enjoyable, and focus on its amazing ability to make the player care through its design. So let's get into it. Dishonored 2 is made memorable by its world design and the individual levels contained within the world itself. Each of the game's 9 levels are crafted in such a way that you are given many reasons to care about the world around you. Because you care so much about how the levels are constructed, you subconsciously begin to pay strict attention to everything that the levels have to offer. I know that Arkane succeeded in their approach because the game's design forces you to be aware of your surroundings without even realizing that you are doing it. Dishonored 2 is a first-person action-adventure stealth hybrid. The game takes place 15 years after the assassination of the Empress Jessamine Kaldwin and the restoration of the throne to her daughter Emily Kaldwin, conducted by her lover and royal protector Corvo Attano. At the ceremony on the anniversary of her death, Emily is dethroned in a coup by the previously unknown sister of Jessamine, Delilah Copperspoon. During the violence, the player is given the choice to either play as Corvo or Emily, with the NPC cast in stone for the duration of the playthrough. The game's narrative focuses on the player's journey to overthrow Delilah and restore order to Dunwall. Most of the game takes place in the nearby city of Karnaca, with the player having to take out several key figures involved in the coup along the way. Almost immediately you realize that the game leaves you to your own devices pretty much from the very beginning. Your first proper objective is to escape Dunwall Tower and deal with the traitorous Mortimer Ramsey. The tower itself is probably the only location in the game that doesn't have the wide open spaces and multiple layers that the other locations in the game are packed with. How you choose to go about eliminating Ramsey is also the most one-dimensional scenario in the game, as the choices are either slice everyone up loud and fast, or take it silent and slow. Ramsey himself can either be killed or knocked out and thrown inside the royal safe room. The subsequent escape from Dunwall is similarly linear as you go down a road with a few back alleys to use, and this early in the game you have basic equipment and no powers. But all this changes in Chapter 2, where you begin to notice the freedom of choice given to the player. In fact, the freedom in general is what sets Dishonored 2 apart from its contemporaries. The objective is to reach Addermire Station, but how you do it is entirely up to you and your abilities. The first obstacle is a wall of light, which for the uninitiated is a wall of impenetrable energy that will disintegrate anything or anyone not attuned to it. There are a variety of ways to get around the wall of light depending on your playstyle and to which extent you upgraded and customized your character. Rather than taking each level and situation one by one and analyzing the choices you are given, I want to instead focus on the overarching theme of player agency and emergent gameplay, and explain it with 4 connected elements that comprise the core of Dishonored 2's gameplay. The first element is world design. Dishonored 2 features the most unique art direction and sense of place that I've likely ever experienced in a game. There's just something about the combination of Mediterranean, medieval, and steampunk that makes each playthrough feel like more than just a standard first-person stealth game. There's some incredible attention to detail in each of the levels that immerses the player and gives them a reason to take everything in. The game also does a great job at storytelling through the design of the environments rather than spouting off a bunch of exposition. A great example of this is in the Dust District when going through the Overseer Outpost. There's a room where you can observe an Overseer euthanizing another to end his suffering, and you can overhear their final conversation.
I'm glad it's you in the end. If I have to go, it warms my spirit to spend my last minutes with a true friend.
You honor me. I wish there was another way. but it's a gut wound, as bad as any I've seen. Better this than a day or two of agony.
Then I go, and I keep the strictures close to my heart. May there be no discord in my spirit.
Goodbye, Overseer. Fade from this world.
Another great example of world building is Jessamine's Heart, which will tell you the deepest secrets about the person targeted.
You kill without thought or reason. Slaughter without remorse. This path of yours leads you astray.
Who's there?
When they see him coming, they avert their eyes and tremble. In truth, this is why he loves the Abbey.
We'll get into the heart and how it can be used in much greater detail later on. The second element is traversal with the incorporation of exploration. Getting through the levels is an integral part of the game, and how you choose to go about doing so leads to some incredibly emergent moments and bolsters the player's agency. Each level is built with layers, almost as if multiple levels are stacked on top of each other. This creates this amazing incentive to constantly look above and below you to find alternate routes. Coming across a locked door can either lead you to finding an alternative route, like going around back, up above, or down below, or you can simply blast down breakable doors with a gunshot, grenades, or wind blast if you want to keep it quiet. As an illustration, the objective of getting to Jindosh's mansion can be completed in multiple ways. You could find the code at the top of the guard outpost and unlock the gate to ride the carriage. You could go through the wall of light by rewiring it with a rewire tool, or loot the keys off of the elite guard in the outpost and use them to unlock the side alley gate. Then use your power to jump over the gap. I mentioned walls of light earlier, and getting past them in multiple ways is not exclusive to the one here in Chapter 4. Tracing the cords from the wall itself will lead you to security panels, which can be rewired, allowing you to pass but frying anyone else. Whale oil tanks supplying the wall with power, which can be taken out to shut it down. Or windmills that can be shut down by activating the lever. The same goes for the rocket-firing watchtowers. You could jump or teleport to the platform and disarm the whale oil, or rewire the security panel, or you can use your ingenuity to fire an incendiary bolt onto the tank to cause an explosion that will shut it down. You could also go through bloodfly-infested adjacent buildings, which serve as a detour, allowing you to avoid certain security measures altogether. Jindosh's Clockwork Mansion is a terrific example of the freedom to traverse. Aside from the entire level changing at various points through activating the levers, you can go through the entire mansion without ever even alerting anyone, including Jindosh himself. I remember the first time I played through it, I went through the way he intended by pulling the lever and going through linearly. The second time through, I noticed the glass roof and shot an arrow through it, then used powers to get up and found myself within the walls. It felt as though I was cheating the game through some sort of exploit, when in fact, Arkane purposefully constructed the mansion to accommodate such a choice. I mentioned the heart earlier, and this mechanic adds to the exploration of the levels because it can be used to track down runes and bone charms that upgrade your character. Identifying a rune or bone charm on the map gives you a reason to explore and figure out a way to access them. Sometimes you realize that it'll take ingenuity to get to their location. So now you have good incentive to think about the best way of going about it because the reward is substantial. Even if playing on a no powers run, runes and outsider shrines are converted into money, which you can use to buy the gear you need on your Flesh and Steel playthrough. Looking through keyholes is a cool mechanic that allows you to both scan the room for threats before entering, but also scan the surroundings for alternate ways in, like through a window on a balcony. But probably the coolest aspect of the traversal and exploration of the levels is safes. Nearly each of the game's 9 levels will contain at least one safe with invaluable loot that can only be opened by figuring out the 3-digit combination. The beauty is that these combinations are found organically through exploration. Often they will be written on notes nearby, but other times they will have to be deduced from clues. In Chapter 1 you have to rip the painting off the wall to reveal the code. In Chapter 2 you have to find a note and a book that when read together will tell the player what the code is. It's definitely not rocket science, but it's thoughtful enough to make you feel smart, and the fact that there is a rune and 3 silver ingots waiting for you in the safe rewards your thoughtfulness. There's one safe where you find a note that gives but one of the 3 numbers, and the other 2 are hinted at by the note itself, which you will then have to find on a nearby calendar and find the circled numbers that relate to the corresponding month from the note. Incorporating problem solving into the exploration is a design choice that you don't often see in games, only in the best immersive sims you can play. One final piece of problem solving is the Jindosh riddle, which is eerily similar to an LSAT logic game. The third element is the combat. Dishonored 2 features some of the best stealth combat in a game I've played to reinforce the assassin theme prevalent throughout. Aside from choosing to play lethally or non-lethally, you can also choose to never even engage, much less take down an enemy except for a few of the key targets. The entire game can be played without both alerting any enemies to your presence and killing a single soul. This freedom makes for some incredibly emergent opportunities for approaching combat. You can distract enemies by throwing objects or hitting structures to either draw them to you or send them going in another direction. This can be used to either sneak by or engage them with stealth takedowns. Finally, the power mechanics add this amazing layer of choice to the combat because of the many different ways you can use them. There are so many options at your disposal, let's use an illustration. Take this one group of enemies as an example. There are so many approaches you can take. You could just fight them all to the death. You could just sneak past them. Of course, these are the obvious choices, but now incorporate your powers. You can use Doppelganger to either distract them or just straight up fight them depending on how much you've upgraded the skill. You can use Devouring Swarm to summon a horde of plague rats to do the same thing, either distract the enemies or fight them. You can use Mesmerize to put them in a trance, rendering them completely ignorant to you and your actions, and this ignorance will sometimes cause non-mesmerized enemies to become distracted by what they're seeing. You can use Domino to link up to 4 enemies. Killing one of them will kill all of them. You can use Possession to take over an enemy and lead them away into seclusion, then break free and kill them with a stealth attack out of sight. Not including the 2 basic approaches, that's 5 different ways to deal with these enemies. Same group of enemies, same location, 5 different results. You can even combine these tactics with the ingenuity already mentioned to make for some incredibly immersive gameplay. Using the same group of enemies for reference, if you notice the runes stuck in the wall right above the 2 guards sitting at the table, you can possess one of them to take it, then lead them away for a stealth kill with no one being the wiser. You can use Far Reach to pull enemies toward you, allowing you to stealth kill them in midair. Going back to watchtowers, rewiring them will force them to fire upon the guards, so you can just sit back and watch them get helplessly gunned down. Rewiring walls of light, then baiting enemies to chase after you, will cause them to evaporate right in front of you. Perhaps the coolest and most creative tactic that I ever had the thought to do was to summon a doppelganger and link it to enemies with Domino. I then sat back and watched the chaos unfold. Every time an enemy would kill the doppelganger, they would also be killing themselves. I would combine this with watchtowers, which meant as the rockets blew up the clone, they would also dispatch all of the enemies linked to it. 2 more things this accomplished was distracting everyone, allowing me to sneak past, and also draining the watchtower of whale oil so that by the time it was finished, it was harmless to me even if I were spotted. There are other elements to combat as well. For instance, you can knock the heads off of the clockwork soldiers to blind them, causing them to turn hostile to nearby enemies. You can use Possession to turn into a rat or something and escape combat altogether. All of these techniques I'm mentioning just barely scratch the surface, as I'm sure other players much better than me completely abuse the mechanics and perform some gravity-defying and game-breaking moves. The final element is much more amorphous and encompasses some distinct aspects. It's basically a combination of reactivity and decision-making. I'm not sure what to call it, so I'm just going to call it reactivity/decision-making. Dishonored 2 is such a well-designed game that the world around you reacts to your actions, while also giving you the organic opportunities to react to the world as well. This is where the care and attention from the player provoked by the design comes full circle. Coming across infested bloodfly nests will present the obvious choice of either sneaking past quietly or cutting them down with your blade. But if you're paying attention, you can figure out that firing an incendiary bolt or throwing a flammable bottle of alcohol will set them ablaze, destroying the nest and killing the flies harvesting it. Black market shops are a major part of the game, allowing you to purchase necessary upgrades and items, and if you help the shopkeeper in Chapter 5, you will receive a special discount from the shopkeeper in Chapter 6.
Oh, but you have to be the person who helped out one of ours in the Conservatory District. Special discount for you then.
Also, each shop can be robbed in a unique way. The best example of this is in Chapter 4. You can give a random beggar some coins and he'll tell you about these people looking for whale oil.
Appreciate it. I'll let you in on the secret. I saw people coming and going recently, looking for whale oil, up to something.
You notice there's a nearby alley locked off by key. If you traverse the environment and manage to get in without the key, the beggar will make a comment to you about it.
Impressive how you managed to get there. Be careful, those people with the oil tanks might still be around.
Eavesdropping on the people inside will give a clue about needing more whale oil to break into the shop.
You said whale oil. I got it for you. Not easy to pinch either. No, you screwed up.
If you go and grab another tank, lo and behold, you can break down the wall and rob the shop. And the reward isn't minimal. It's several hundred coins and valuable equipment. You notice the shop in Chapter 5 has a crank wheel, and behind the wall is a cord that can be broken, dropping some object down a well. If you trace the source of the well, you'll find yourself at a tunnel blocked off by a gate. But by using the wheel to open the gate, you can climb up the now reachable chain and use it to access the interior of the shop. And once again, the reward is valuable. The level of crack in the slab is so unique because of the ability to jump back and forth from the present to the past. Using the Outsider's timepiece, you can use this time travel mechanic to access areas you otherwise wouldn't be able to. For example, there's a room in the past blocked off by a vault door, but going to the present allows you to walk right in and loot everything in sight. You can also affect the present with actions performed in the past, opening even more doors for you to enter. You can knock down the support beams for a balcony in the past, then travel back to the present to find the balcony has crumbled and a new path opened up for you to walk right up. You can throw a crank wheel into an opening in the past, then travel back to the present to find the wheel and use it to drain the room and recover a rune. How you choose to deal with Stilton will also affect the state of his mansion in the present. Leaving him alone will obviously yield no consequences. But if you kill him, the mansion will be put up for sale and the subsequent owner will renovate it but then abandon it. If you knock him out, he will never participate in the ritual with Delilah and her allies, which means he stays sane and the mansion will become a beautiful palace. The timepiece also leads to incredible cat and mouse stealth gameplay. Taking out enemies in the past, then traveling back to the present can be repeated to keep enemies completely unaware and oblivious to your actions, making combat in this section feel much more creative. I've mentioned assassination targets quite a bit, and unsurprisingly, Stilton is not the only target who can be dealt with in multiple ways. Dr. Hypatia is revealed to be the crown killer, working for Delilah to make it seem like Corvo and Emily are responsible, allowing her to overthrow them both. Hypatia can be cured of her duality by crafting a serum which brings her back to reality to the point where she'll even join you aboard the dreadful whale. Jindosh can be rendered basically lobotomized by placing him in his electroshock chair. This is probably one of the most deep and meaningful methods when you realize that the mad and eccentric inventor who uses his brain to change humanity and culture is now a prisoner in his own mind, no longer able to use his thinking to wreak havoc under Delilah's direction.
And if I combine the acid against a copper plate, what does it do?
The two targets in the Dust District, in addition to being killed or knocked out and delivered to the other faction, can also both be exiled. This is cool because you have to go out of your way and pay attention to the notes and clues indicating that this is even possible. If you observe the oraculum and accompanying note, you can place the discarded lenses in the machine to sever Brianna Ashworth's connection to the Void. But without question, the most innovative target is Duke Abel in the penultimate chapter. The Duke is basically the right-hand political influence of Delilah. At the Grand Palace, the Duke has a body double who looks and sounds exactly like him, and the game doesn't tell you who is who. Instead, you have to figure it out for yourself. This brings in all of the previously mentioned design elements. There are so many different ways to figure it out. All feel like cheating if you are paying attention. Megan will tell you before the mission that the body double smokes, whereas the real Duke doesn't.
A friend of mine washes the linens and said the double is a smoker, if that helps.
So if you observe one of them smoking, you know that you have the double. You can also eavesdrop and hear him talking about how the real Duke takes all of the credit for his work.
Being put up on the scale like some prize bull each week, told to gain a pound or two to keep up with the good Duke.
You can find a note indicating that the real Duke will be taking his meal in a particular part of the palace. They even keep different keys on them. The real Duke has the vault key, whereas the double only has a chest key. The most ingenious method is using the heart, which will reveal the target's inner thoughts, allowing you to figure out who the heart is talking about. What makes this so good is that you have to think about doing this all on your own.
Tedious meeting. Endless complaints from the miners about the conditions below. It sickens his spirit, seeing such riches squandered.
If you confront the double and let them know you know they aren't the real Duke, you can convince him to assume his role and to have the real Duke exiled after you steal his medallion. Watching the ensuing confrontation is one of the cooler interactions in the game, as the Duke, who was personally responsible for the coup, helplessly gets banished with no recourse.
Get your hands off me! Workman. He served me well for years. We'll never find anyone else who so bears my resemblance. Take him away, Captain, but be gentle.
I think I understand, Your Eminence. We'll handle it.
What? This is outrageous. I'll have you all skinned alive and set in a salt bath. If only there was something we could do for him. I suppose all those years pretending he was me, that eventually took its toll. No! Stop! I am the Duke of Serkurnus! You can't do this!
Which brings us to Delilah, the final target. The final confrontation is made memorable by the multiple ways of dealing with her. Typically, a final boss is where the game pulls out all the stops and throws everything but the kitchen sink at you. If you play the game straight up, that's what happens. You have to fight multiple clones of her at once. However, you can climb the terrain up and behind where you exit the painting to find the real her conjuring magic from above, and you can sneak up and take her down easily. If you spoke to her statues earlier in the tower, she will be alerted to your presence, which means she's perched up on the throne guarded by hounds. However, you can still dispatch her quietly by sneaking in through a window and distracting her with Doppelganger or Mesmerize or something like that. When her back is turned, you can use the heart on her, and if you've crafted a corrupt rune, you can place it, then her, on the throne, rendering her powerless.
What I've always deserved. My justice. Now what's always been marred and distorted will be perfect. I've waited so long. Sing my songs and lick my flesh. Worship me!
I hope this analysis has shed some light on the game's strengths and convinced you to give it a try if you haven't already. I would love to make a video discussing the history of immersive sims and the cornerstone titles like the Deus Ex games, the Thief games, the System Shock games, and Prey, just to name a few. Coincidentally, each of those franchises were worked on, at least in some capacity, by Harvey Smith, the director of Dishonored 2. And so it's no surprise that Dishonored 2 earns its place in the legacy of the immersive sim genre, a game that makes the player feel like a hacker exploiting the systems of the game, when in actuality, the systems were designed for that very purpose.